shortly. So, Maritza, thank you so much for being here today. I am so honored to spend time with you in these spaces and outside of these spaces and back in these spaces where you and I have had many different layers to our relationship and different iterations, different times in our relationship. So, just to share with all of you watching, Maritza and I met at Scarlet Sage, and she came in to become a tarot reader at Scarlet Sage. So, you came in, Maritza, and said, I would love to work here. What is this place like? And then gave me a reading. And one of the things that I remember from you, one, you're always in red of some sort, usually red lips or a red dress, or like red is your color. It's like vibrant and it's sexy and it's you. Like it's so you. And
Oh,
I
thank
just
you.
remember that. I just remember that so vividly, this vivacious, wild, beautiful, brilliant woman coming in. And through the years, I was really privy to your story of all of the different layers that came beyond tarot, really, which
Hmm.
is stuff that you'll be mentioning today as your upbringing, but understanding you're in organizational development, you worked for Greenpeace, you're in these large organizations at this point of your career, but have this depth inside of the spiritual path that you were raised in. So I'm really excited for you to share that today. And in context of what is it like starting your own business, even with all this background and other organizations, where are you at with that? And I am going to pause there and let you share a little bit of your story, really specifically to the Bruja School that you have currently today, but feel free to weave in any other pieces that you find necessary.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. And that is such a broad question. You might regret it because it's like, tell me your story. How long do you have? But no, like you said, I mean, I've done a couple of different things throughout my life, and to me, they've always kind of felt like the same thing because it's like at the service of the same thing. But I grew up in Chile, where I was born into a family of witches, and so I grew up with magic and a spiritual practice that I've come to realize is unusual for many people, but is becoming more and more mainstream, luckily. As of recently, I say luckily because I think anybody can benefit from it, and we all kind of need a little of magic these days. And I built a career in the nonprofit sector. I worked as a communications person at a bunch of different organizations. I worked in philanthropy and human rights and environmental issues and racial justice and economic access and health parity and all the things. Um, and during that process, I was always having my own spiritual practice and working magic. And so my last job, I was living in Australia. I was in Sydney running the Oceans campaign for Greenpeace International. And through a series of reasons, I decided to come back to California, where I had already been for a very long time, and start my own business. And I was in the process of doing that. It was right before I came back to the US in 2017, so 9 years ago now. And some point between 17 and 19, I came to the Scarlet Sage. I know that because 2020, the pandemic happened, and then nobody was going to the Scarlet Sage or anywhere for that matter. But I remember I was building my consulting company here in the US, and I also wanted to have a more visible or like public facing practice at that point. Like the seeds of Bruja School were in my brain and in my heart, and they had been for very long. And I just wanted to get myself out there a little bit. And see what the magical community was like in the Bay Area. And so I remember I just emailed you, and I was like, hey, do you need readers? And you were like, come in and give me a reading. And I was like, oh, wow. And then it was really sweet and very magical because I remember you say because this wasn't like my main thing. I was building a business, right? Building a consulting company at the time. And I had this crazy schedule and a bunch of clients, and I had open Thursday evening. And after I gave you the reading, you contacted me, or maybe it was right away, I can't remember, but you said, I remember you saying, I have one reader who's leaving and their spot is opening on Thursday evening. And I'm like, of course it is. That is so good. And so that's how we started building the friendship. And so by now, I was just doing organizational development work. So what happened is that through my career in communications, basically learning, not learning, but like, well, earlier in my career, learning and then practicing how to help organizations that have very important missions as the center of their work, how to communicate them to the public, to external stakeholders, to their community members. And so part of that process for me was going to grad school. And I always joke, because it's not a joke, that's why it's funny, that I talked an Ivy League university into giving me a master's degree in spell casting, because my research was on public opinion and how it's formed and why it changes. And the fact that if you really think about it, we are all constantly speaking our reality into being, right? And so there's all of this evidence in political communications and science communications that somebody starts telling a story and all of a sudden it is so because they say so. And next thing you know, it's on the paper and it is so. And so I came to that from that perspective of being super attuned to the fact that speaking reality into being is a foundational axiom of magic and of many spiritual traditions. I've also heard that in some other sacred books, or some sacred books, there's quotes like, in the beginning, there was the word. Like literally, the first thing that happened was like somebody or something or somehow a word was spoken and then the world started, right? So it's like a very visceral truth that humans have about this way in which we can work with energy. So I built a whole career around that. And I ended up doing organizational development work eventually because I found that every time I wanted to do my job in communications, there were issues, interpersonal issues or structural issues in organizations that needed help. And I did that kind of like out of the side of my desk. And then eventually I realized that's a whole field. And I guess it comes very naturally to me because I didn't even study it. And here I am doing it. But I digress. The point of that is that I was doing all of that work. And what I came to realize over the years is that one of the reasons why that work um, was so near and dear to my heart is because it was so intertwined with my spiritual practices. Because like one of the foundations of my spiritual practice is really understanding that speaking truth is the path to liberation. And so speaking truth to power is literally how I built a career in the nonprofit sector, trying to make social change, working on social justice issues. But on a more personal level, what happened is that my friends and colleagues and people surrounding me were always kind of curious about me, like, there's something about her. And I'm like, yes, there is. It's called being a witch. Let me tell you all about it. It took me a while to like understand, for that penny to drop, because people always thought I was kind of weird, and I never took offense to it because they did mean it in a bad way, but I didn't understand what it was that they were trying to point to. And then over a long period of time, I'm like, oh my God, these folks don't have magic. They don't have magic. They don't know how to work it. They're scared of witches. Like they have a total different worldview that I'm not super, I mean, it's not that I'm not familiar with it, but it's not mine. And then when I really understood that I was, in fact, the weird one, and by weird one, I mean the minority, that many of my spiritual practices and most of my spiritual tools and the foundation of how I work magic in my everyday life and at work, and by magic, I just mean the craft of transforming reality, right? Of like change making. None of that was available to so many people around me. I was like, oh, it's not that hard, yo. I can teach you. And that's when I decided to start Bruja School. And so it's been a super interesting path because I've been working in my one business, which is this organizational development consultancy company that I've had for 9 years now. And then in 2020, so 6 years now, I started working on Bruja School, and I developed this program called Liberation Magic, which is basically where I teach you everything that I know about spiritual practices, my wisdom, and how to work magic. And I condensed it into a program that people can wrap their brain around and open their hearts to and learn the practices. And I always say that it's kind of like learning the ABCs, right? Like you come to me magically illiterate. I teach you how to read and write. And from there, you can eventually one day write the great American novel. Probably not at the end of the 13 weeks because it takes practice. But in theory, you do have all the tools that you need to continue the practice on your own and grow in confidence and skill and talent and power and really develop your own spiritual path, which is the only one I think that works when it's your own. And I'll pause at that, Laura, because I can talk about all of this until I'm blue in the face, and you probably have other questions.
You don't need to pause at all. I think all of us could listen to you talking all day long, but what I love about your story and what you're sharing here is the really important philosophical idea of what magic and what energy actually is and how is it understood in overculture. Because I see the same point of view when I look at healing, when I look at why people want healing, why people, I'm going to use this example, why people want longevity. They want
Hmm.
longevity because they want health. And the way that I have to decipher it with my own field is, oh, they actually need herbalism, they just don't know it. Like with magic, you're like, oh, they need magic. They're just not calling it magic. Like they're doing it already. They're in the biohacking is happening. They don't even know that it's herbalism, right? It's like we have to actually translate what the overculture understands and feels comfortable with in order to see ourselves in these spaces as a confident human. And I think that translates into these fringe spaces where we can feel marginalized, we can feel over here where no one understands us, or we can translate things for folks in a way that helps them understand they're already doing it and just they're just calling it something else. And I think you are extremely good at that. Like, let's just switch, let me play in this field with like the naming of organizational development, but also let me shift it slowly, strategically, with time, and help people that already understand it, that know it, to come with me as well. And I know you long enough to know that it's like slowly coming, those worlds are coming together too in the field that you're in, that you're bringing in the spellcasting, you're bringing in the magic in these groups and these organizations as well. And I love that you're calling it all these places because it helps people understand something that's really big and really um, culturally challenged by so much racism, so much appropriation, so much colonization. And that piece is hard to unravel for folks without you presenting it in a way that they might understand. And that's just my I'm pulling in and deciphering it based on many different experiences that I know that our students here having. And I feel alone. I feel like people aren't listening, that I'm a small niche inside of this really big world where I think you're doing it really well if you're already recognizing folks in the space that you're in.
That is such a rich topic of conversation. I mean, I think, well, first of all, everything that you're saying, Laura, just reminds me of the power of language, right? So, in the instance of my practices, so often to this day in 2026, many people are like, witch? Like, is that real? Or like, is that evil? And I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? That's where we're at. Okay. And it's not anybody's fault that they know what they know. Like if you're not brought up in a magical household or if you're not brought up in a family of brujas, how the hell would you know anything about it? You wouldn't. What you would know, excuse me, is what the default culture at large is telling you about it. And I've come to understand that witches have the word witch has an incredibly negative connotation in our culture. Witches are supposed to be evil and old and ugly and all the things. And it's really because powerful women are a threat to the established order. And the established order, like you and I have discussed many times, is not really set up for the vast majority of humans to thrive. I was just reading this morning that we're on the verge of having the first trillionaire, which is like such a policy failure. You know what I mean? Like the fact that some of us are allowed to hoard the resources that really belong to everybody. And it's really simple, right? Like, regardless of your political stance or like your understanding of the markets or whatever, the bottom line is that if we believe that we can all be fairly compensated by our labor so that we can make a living, there's no scenario under which it makes sense that anybody could be allowed to be trillion times more valuable than anybody else. Like, that's just like an absurdity. And we accept it like it's not a big problem, like it's completely normal. It's covered in the newscast at night, and yet we have a problem with the word witch. It's like really fascinating to me. But anyway, back to your point, like this idea of language and what we name things is so important. And sometimes we feel like we are in the minority or we are misunderstood, and many times that's true, but we're rarely the only ones. And so I think that the challenge when you're developing a business that might not be, I don't know, selling cell phones or purses, right? It's something a little bit more complicated than that, or a little bit more mysterious than that, is how do I describe my craft or my service of my product in a way that more people can understand without losing the core and the soul and the essence of what it is that I do. And that
Yes,
is
yes, yes, yes,
mostly
yes, 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 yes. Sorry, keep.
No, and I was gonna say, and that's mostly an inside job. I mean, like you and I are, personal friends, you know my story, and it's been years of me sort of like playing with like how upfront do I want to come out, if you will, as a witch, at what point, what is appropriate so that people are are not feeling 100% freaked out, but at the same time, I'm not alienating people that maybe do need to meet a bruja and maybe do need the medicine, but wouldn't feel comfortable. If I can't even own my own power, why would they trust me with anything? You know what I mean? So it's a constant pull and push and pull of sort of reading the room, and at the same time understanding that, you know what, somebody's gonna go first. It might as well be me, because then somebody else like me will see me and know that they're not the only one. And that's how we build community, and that's how we transform the spaces, right? Like I always use the analogy of what it must have been, well, what it, and in some places still is, but like being queer in the US in 1950 was a very different experience than it is to be queer in 2026. And that's because of incredibly courageous people that were true to themselves and incrementally and sometimes radically and sometimes violently and tragically took the stand to take up the space to speak the truth. That it's like, yeah, there's like all ways of being, and what's your problem basically. And I feel like the same is true for all kinds of ways of being human, right? For different sexual orientations, for different gender expressions, for different spiritual practices, right? Which is like, it's like we are tolerant of different religions until you say you're a witch. And being a witch is complicated because it's not a religion per se, because there's what folks understand as more traditional religions that overlap, right? With which, like, you can be a Christian witch, you can be a Jewish witch, you can be a Buddhist witch. It's not mutually exclusive, but it's, I was gonna say, for whatever reason considered differently. Well, and the reason is because there's some true power there and some real opinions about what we think we would like to have the world look like, and it's not like this. So people that want to keep it like this benefit from demonizing some practices. And I think there might be something of that as well. I mean, I'm not an herbalist myself, but from what I know of it, there's like also a whole political story behind what happens when people know how to heal themselves? What happens when people can be self-resourced in their own garden? And what does that mean for, the sales of some other things? And it's not so simple, right?
That's exactly right. Thank you for saying all of that. It's surprising the longer I'm in this space and in as an herbalist, still, like you said, okay, this is 2026. We're still here. We're still at the place where people are like, oh, witches are bad or evil and scary. And we're still at a place where, oh, what's an herbalist? Oh, you smoke pot? I do too. Like we're still there, right? And it's fascinating to me, like you said, that there's, of course, a political agenda of keeping people small, but there's that cultural agenda of keeping women in a place of serving men, truly. And witches don't do that. Herbalists don't serve the pharmaceutical industry. Like, we're not serving the machines that run the space or the world, I guess. So there's that layer too. What I would love to have you go a little bit into is you have, I'm jumping a little bit. You've started Bruja School formally again. You relaunched it recently. I would love for you to share what that journey has been like for you, because we have students here and young entrepreneurs here who are in that process, beginning stages of where do I go to share about my journey, about my life, and where do you feel like right now has really benefited you? What have you tried? What have you stopped doing that you feel like hasn't worked? I'm curious if you want to share a little bit there, because we can weave back and forth of
Yeah,
all
yeah, yeah, yeah.
stuff.
Laura, do you mean in terms of the business? Like, how do I
Yes,
start
in
and grow
Bruja
the
School.
business?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
definitely. Oh, that is such a great question because I did not start out thinking when I grow up, I want to be a business person. Like, that was the last thing I thought would ever happen. And to this day, I feel like that's the last of my interests, which is really problematic because if I want to run a business and I don't think myself of a business person, is a non-starter. Like I'm already blocking myself, right? And so the first hurdle that I had to overcome was this idea that, well, do I really want to sell this? Like it just felt kind of icky. And I did an insane amount of work on this internally and in community and like just feeling through it and thinking about it. And one of the things that really helped me is that I realized that back in the day, you would have brought me a goat and a dozen eggs for my services. Like this idea that this medicine and these practices were meant to be a gift. Yes, they are a gift. They're a gift that I carry and that they're a gift that I'm going to offer you, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to be a martyr and starve myself to death in the process. That was never part of the deal, right? And again, back to the more political analysis, there's like this like, yeah, it's super awesome if all the healers and the herbalists and the witches and the therapists, right? Because that's what they're called now formally, but it's like these healing arts. If all of those people get shame and guilted into working for free, who benefits from that? Not us, and not even our clients or patients or communities or whatever you call the people that you work with, because if we're not well resourced, right? So that was the first hurdle that I had to overcome. I'm like, can I really charge for this? And it took me a minute, and I was like, I can't not charge for this. That's a non-starter. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous because I can't survive in this society if I don't do so. Also, because the work that I share is invaluable. It could not be more powerful. It could not be more effective. And the fact that it's invaluable doesn't mean that it doesn't have a price, y'all. It means that whatever price it has is a deal because it's invaluable. And when that finally sort of like that penny dropped, I became a lot more comfortable with it and realizing that all of that was basically internalized colonialism and internalized misogyny and racism and a bunch of things that like made me think of my work as less valuable or or so sacred that it shouldn't touch money, when that's not a witchy principle. Like witches are super embodied, like this whole idea of like the spiritual and the material being separate is a very it's kind of like from the Judeo-Christian canon. It's like not a thing that's mine, but it's in the culture that we're all swimming with. And I was like, oh yeah, no, that's not mine. I can let that go now. So that was the first thing, right? Like really being like, this is worthwhile. It helps people. People are willing to pay for anything that helps them, and even stuff that doesn't help them. Like, let's just get over that. I'm not saying it's easy, but it needs to happen. That's the first thing.
I want to add something to that. So thank you
Yeah,
so
yeah,
much
yeah.
for saying that, because a big piece of why I'm here and why I do this groups is because it doesn't make sense to me that people that work at Google are so much wealthier than people who are healing people's trauma in their lives and working with plants and building community and healing, truly healing, sometimes generational trauma,
Right.
ancestral lines, thinking about posterity. And yet people behind a computer all day long are like worth $400,000 a year. So I was like, this needs to change. Our value system needs to change. And we need to internally say we are just as valuable, maybe more, and that's a whole other conversation, but we are just as valuable to society as these people who get jobs at Google or get jobs at, at these Amazon, let's say. And that, and the amount of money we invest, the amount of money, time we invest in these education, these teachers, these courses, personal work, it's unbelievable how many people I know who are spending thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars on these trainings for themselves, yet feel like they cannot charge anything for all of those years and that money of all of the investments. And so I think you're absolutely correct of like that deconstructing what it was, what it is, and our value in it is the biggest step, because you're right, it's the biggest block for people even feeling comfortable with marketing, even comfortable with putting a product out there, building a website, building a social media, is that especially women, we're not supposed to be successful. We're not supposed to be out there in the world. We're not supposed to be seen, right? These are all these layers. So I just wanted to add that.
Oh my God. No, you're so right. You're so right because there's like that's like there's a two part, right? Like one is the whole idea of like making money as a healer, making money as a witch, making money as a herbalist. Like that's one thing. And then also there's the making money at all, right? Because so many people, and this is like rampant in the nonprofit sector. One of the reasons I left the nonprofit work and decided to start my own company was because I was of a certain age and I had already done enough internal work where I realized I gotta go get me some cash, y'all. This is stupid. Like, there's enough money in the planet for everybody. And this idea that like money is evil can be true if you let it, but is not an absolute truth. You know what I mean? I just think that so many of us are horrified by how power is being wielded in the world and like how people go about getting money that like we're like I don't want to have any part of it. And so I understand that because like I've lived through it and I've come out to the other side where right now and like I've told you about this and I'm absolutely shameless about it. I want to make a ton of money, like as much money as possible because why wouldn't I? I totally trust myself that that money is going to be put to good use. And I totally trust that me making more money does not take away from anybody else. Because I'm not looking to become a trillionaire and like freaking destroy the earth in the process. You know what I mean? And I think that many of us that are basically small business owners or not even business owner yet just like self-employed, think that like, oh, I don't want to become, like evil. And I'm like, listen, chances of you becoming the next Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos are literally non-existent. So don't worry about it. Like, go get yourself some cash. You know what I mean?
I love that so much. I thank you for bringing up the energy of money too, because we've talked about this and I love talking about this, is that money is options. That's all it is. And people are good or bad, right? People do the thing with money, and money is an amplifier. Our very first interview, they said money is like a psychedelic. It's a nondescript amplifier. It'll amplify someone's greed. It'll amplify their philanthropy, their altruistic self. It'll amplify how they want to do good in the world because it amplifies who these people are. And we see the bad guys because they're the ones who want to hoard it. We see them more than we see the good guys, right? But we see Melinda French Gates right now donating, over $600 million to women's health. It's amplifying her impact. And we have to remember money itself is neutral. It's actually just a machine. It has nothing to do with the individual. The individual is the one that has more power. They are the ones who are deciding where it goes, and pulling the money out of the bad guy piece is really important. And I agree with you. I want to be the one buying the land for conservation for land back initiatives. Like I want that money to do that because that needs to happen. And you are a really good advocate for that same framework. And I think that framework, we just need to keep deconstructing all of it.
Totally, 100%. And I also think that money is the most tangible evidence of magic because money is the most prominent collective hallucination. Like money is nothing. It's ones and zeros. It used to be pieces of paper and pieces of metal. Now it's not even that. It's like beep, beep. You go pay with a debit card or a credit card, it goes beep, and that's it. And it's like ones and zeros moving through the ether. What the fuck is that? It's a collective agreement, right? And so we can agree on whatever. And like, anyway, don't get me started. So anyway, that's the thing. Like, do your work around your own worth, around the worth of your work, and around money. That's the baseline. I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying it is foundational. I do believe that if you can get past that, go get a job because it's going to be incredibly hard to grow a business if you're still struggling with that. And then all of the other things that people like us that are into magic and spiritual practice and healing and herbs are probably not super excited about, like keeping good books, if you don't know how to do it, getting help from a bookkeeper, actually tracking your money. Do you know how much you earn? Do you know how much you spend? Do you have debt? Do you know what the interest rate is? Blah, blah, blah. Boring, boring. And also liberation. That's like literally like my numbers personally and in my businesses are squeaky clean. I can tell you exactly where every penny is, the return of investment of everything, like all of the things. I learned all of this as an older lady, y'all. Like, I was not brought up to do this. I wasn't interested in it. It was something that I was willing to do because I wanted to see my business succeed, right? So there's like that. Same with marketing, same with sales. And this is something that I struggle with to this day. Like, oh, but sales feels icky. That's like a different mask of the same money story, because we have like the caricatures of like the used car salesman or like the pushy person that's like gonna kind of like bully you into buying a thing. And I'm like, yeah, that could be it. Or you can just be like, hey, I have this incredible thing that's totally gonna help you with your problem, and it's available if you're interested. And like you're offering that because that's what you're here to offer. And again, I think that some personalities have a harder time with that, but whatever you need to do to dissolve those blockages, to get past that, to become an incredible marketer. I was just on a call with somebody, and we were actually talking about business, and they're talking about using ads, running ads like on YouTube, say, or Facebook, whatever, social media to like grow a mailing list. And then their theory was like, okay, so when somebody signs up for your thing, like you email them once a day for like 30 days. And I'm like, are you out of your skull? That is like spam me. And they said, and it really paused me, they're like, listen, they're signing up because they're interested. And in this day and age, everybody's attention span is nothing because we've been completely co-opted by the tech bros and we're all like doom scrolling and kind of like dispersed. And on average, like people will see like two emails out of 10. And yeah, some people are like, I don't want to know about this, and they were never your people anyway. But the people that really want, imagine you're interested in herbalism, say, to use you as an example, Laura, and I sign up for your list. and you're like, okay, in these 30 days, I'm going to tell you about like the 30 most common plants that can be used medicinally in your area. If that's my interest, I would weep. I'm like, are you kidding me? You're going to give me this? Wow. Had I ever thought about it that way before? No, of course not, because all the stories, right? I was like, and so what's true is that it can be spammy, it can be like kind of cheesy and pushy and wrong and not aligned with you, or it can be a powerful gift, an incredible service, like it's something that people are like infinitely grateful for. Both are true. What story are you going to choose to pick so that you can actually build the business that you need to build and reach the people that need you?
I hear you're spellcasting us right now.
And
You're helping us build the spell. What is the story that you're choosing, and how are you manifesting that reality? I love it so much. That's so great. It's so powerful.
So I mean, because like, look, just to be totally transparent, like when I first heard this idea of like somebody gets on your list, email them every day for 30 days, I wanted to kill myself. I'm like, I could never do that. But then when I think about it, like what I just said, like imagine, Laura, I get on your list and you're like, for the next 30 days, I'm gonna share a plant that you can probably forage down by Lake Merritt here in Oakland that you can use for tea that helps with stress. I would be like, what? I mean, I don't even know if there's such a thing, but you do, right? Because you're the herbalist. I'm not. And so again, that reframe and folks that are running massive businesses wouldn't think twice about this. Like they because it's like an attitude thing too, right? They're like, look, I have this amazing thing. Like I'm doing you this the favor of like letting you know about this service. And like why do the people that hold the most power, why do the people that have the most sacred medicine don't think of it like that? Actually, I do have an answer, and it has nothing to do with you. It's historical and cultural and political, and it's our job to move through it. It's our job to move through it because how else is it going to change? So I think that developing the practice of becoming really shameless about our gift is critical because why would you be ashamed of it? What the hell? Who does that benefit? You know what I mean? And I think that every single piece of the business has that for folks that are not socialized to be thinking of themselves as business people or wealthy or good marketers or whatever. Like the systems for the business, some of us are not system people, but we got to build the systems. I'm not very detailed oriented. It's been the most painful thing about my business is like there's parts of running a business that require attention to detail. Those pieces of work are the most exhausting ones for me because I hate doing them and I suck at them. But I can. It's not that I'm incapable, and I can also get help with them. And so just like understanding that at the end of the day, and Laura, I think I've shared this with you before as well. I believe that the best business strategy, the best campaign strategy, really the best life strategy, no matter what it is keep going. Like you're not going to know right away. You're going to have to fail and figure it out. You're going to learn more. Like as long as you keep going, it's going to be okay. And you're going to learn and you're probably going to succeed. But it's like everything, so much easier said than done. And it sounds very simple, but it's like that's like a really profound spell. Like the 100% commitment to keep going is no small feat, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, such wise words from such a wise woman that you are. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I'm curious if you can share some of the nitty gritty, some of the brass tacks here.
Yeah.
Talked about the energy of money, talked about systems, understanding how to build out systems, how to be the best marketer. What kind of marketing have you been using with Bruja School, and what do you feel like is working for you? Because this is an audience that might be similar to a lot of the audiences that our group is looking at and talking to.
Yeah. So, okay, so what's been interesting about my business path in growing Bruja School is that I started it a few years after I started my organizational development consulting. And so the org development has been the main source of income for the last 9 years. And 3 years into it, I had enough of a stable baseline that I'm like, okay, I can start devoting a little bit more time, or actually anytime. That's when I started Bruja School. And so, as an Aries, very impulsive and incredibly impatient, I think Bruja School is going ridiculously slow because I've been at it for 6 years and it's not generating enough income yet to be my main source of income. The reason this happened is because I chose to bootstrap it, meaning I needed to make enough money from my consulting company, or I'm assuming in some of your cases from your day jobs, so that I wasn't going to incur any debt while doing this. I'm not I no longer think that's necessarily the best approach. My relationship with debt has changed a lot over the last many years, and I prefer to not incur unsecured debt. But I think that, and that's just a personal preference, but I think that secured debt or even unsecured debt is how businesses are built. Like, how are you gonna be able to invest in the business if you don't have the cash? So I did not do it that way. I did it very slowly. And what happened was, I think the first cohort of Liberation Magic might have been in 2020 or maybe 2021. I can't remember now. But it was people who knew me, it was tarot reading clients, it was friends of friends, and it was a very small cohort. And that was like rinse and repeat. Then I started posting on social media a little bit. I would say absolutely don't do it like I've done it because I never quote just what I said before. Oh my God, like showing all my dirty laundry. I never kept going. Like I start and stop. I'm not very interested. I haven't like cracked it enough. So it's been like it works sometimes, and then like anything, I start paying attention to it and it kind of slows down. So so it's been like that. I didn't start building a mailing list until 18 months ago, which is ridiculous, right? Like I was in business for a solid 4 years, 4 or 5, yeah, something like at least 4 years before I started building a mailing list. And the reason I didn't do it is because I was scared that I was going to get people's names and then I was going to ghost them, which was a totally valid fear because my consulting firm is like insanely busy. I'm working crazy hours. Like it's going really, really well. And so I only had so much time to devote to it. And so eventually over time, I was able, my plan was I want to buy myself back some time so that I have enough money that I don't have to worry about be making all this money. So I can like actually open up some space to devote to Bruja School. And that finally happened last year. Last year, two things happened that were super cool. One is that I actually started my newsletter, I think in December of 24 or maybe January of 25, like the beginning of last year. And I've been sending out a newsletter every week since, and I haven't skipped one, which is absurd, like nothing short of a miracle that that happened. And at first, all I was doing was emailing my list. That was super little because it was like people that I invited or ended up on my website or sometimes saw me on social media that I did last year because I was going to feel better knowing that I had it in me to always be sending out the newsletter before I grew the list. I didn't want to grow the list and then ghost people. I wanted to make sure I was going to actually be in relationship with them. So I did that. And then I had taught my program Liberation Magic live on Zoom maybe 3 or 4 times before I decided to make the content evergreen. And so I recorded the entire curriculum on videos. I made them little modules. I have the PDFs, the witch work, all of the things. And so I didn't have to teach live every time. And so I still have weekly calls with my enrolled students, but that time is devoted exclusively to coaching, to Q&A, to ritual, to ceremony, to whatever I want to do. But I don't have to repeat the same thing over and over and over again because people have access to the modules and they can go through it in their own time. I cannot tell you the amount of work that that was, and it's done. Like Liberation Magic does never have to be reshot because that is my baseline wisdom and it's probably not going to change. as I learn new things, as I tweak my practices, I can create new things, but that one's done. And so this idea of like building a legacy and building the infrastructure for your long-term business is real. I find it really important. So those two things happened last year, and I'm really proud of them. And right now, the second cohort using the pre-recorded lessons is almost done. And probably the last cohort, because I now decided to have an evergreen way of doing it so people can sign up anytime. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be selling all the time or that there's not going to be times where there's like promotions and urgency to get people to actually sign up, but it's available at any time. And so when that was built, I decided to start running some ads, which is where this conversation that I was sharing about with came from, and and it was really difficult emotionally because I'm like, oh, ads, and I'm like, listen, do you know how the online space works? Like, do you understand the algorithms? Do you understand what AI is doing? Like, you want to have a business in the 21st century or you don't. And I'm not saying you're going to do anything to sell because I'm certainly not doing that. But when I've had calls with people that found me through ads, the more I have that experience, the more excited I am about running the ads because people are like, you're a godsend. I can't believe I found you. This is what I've been looking for. And there's no way in hell they would have never known about me if I didn't run the ads. I hear this from people who meet their spouses on dating apps. You know what I mean? Some people felt a particular way from dating apps until they met their partner and they're like, yeah, I would have never met them otherwise. And so that's how I'm feeling about the ads. So this year I'm running ads. My list has grown, like has more than doubled in 3 months. Because the first year I was emailing people in my dinky little list, but I wasn't thinking about growing the list. And like now I am with the ads, and it's like great. It's working great. Um, why am I talking about all this? Laura, what was the question? Where am I going?
I wanted to hear your journey, and this is exactly what it is. So thank you. What
Thank
has
you.
worked for you with
Oh, I
marketing? What
remember. Right.
hasn't worked?
Okay.
Yeah.
And so full disclosure, like right now, um, it's a very interesting time, and this is where some of my colleagues that are all like on the more witchy space, business owner, sort of like online coach planet think that entrepreneurship is a spiritual path because right now it's like one foot in front of the other. The list is growing. All the quote stats on the back end look amazing. I just started, so I haven't made the money back on the ads yet. And I genuinely have no doubt that I'm gonna, and I'm changing the system, right? Because I'm not gonna be running the cohorts. So I'm in the middle of the next stage. Like it's perpetually self-regenerating, like the work, right? You're never spiritual development, a personal path, and entrepreneurship are alike in the sense that there's no arriving. Well, in life, there's no arriving. You learn, you grow, you want the thing, you get the thing, you're grateful, you enjoy it, and then you want the next thing because that's life, right? And so the trick in the business world, as well as in life, is how do I keep wanting what I want and being ambitious and scaling and growing and being excited about more and next without forgetting that all of that is also a smokescreen and here and now is the only thing that we actually have. And holding that paradox is what I teach my students in Liberation Magic, but is what I've had to practice in building my business as well, right? So right now I feel really good about how it's going. Um, and I'm trying new things and I'm excited because I've had more time to devote to it. And I think it's like anything in life. It's like the growth of my consulting company was incredibly explosive because of my devotion to it. Because like when I came back to the US from Australia, I was like, I need to make a living. And it's like, there's nothing as motivational as like no, not having a choice. Like I was like, I have got to make me some money. And I did. And then I was super lucky in that the context in the first years of me being in business desperately needed my services. So there was a lot of demand and a lot of it was word of mouth. And it's that kind of business. But then I could have done what I'm doing for Bruja School for that business in terms of like marketing and ads and growing it. And I wasn't really interested because I really wanted to devote it to this. And I'm in a way, I'm just starting. Like Bruja School has been around for a while, and what I teach, I've had many cohorts. I've had a lot of alum, if you will. That's not new, but me really take committing to treating it as a business is a year old. So I feel like I had like a spiritual sharing hobby, and now I have a little baby 1 year old witch business. So I'll have to report back in a couple of years to tell you how it's going.
Well, I'm just grateful for your honesty and transparency about your energetic connection to your business. Not just connection, but dedication, right?
Hmm.
Whatever we put our attention to, more of it happens. And I know that's the basic law of attraction, but it is the energy we put towards something is what we're going to receive back. And I think it's very easy to have a business on the side that might make passive income. The idea of it's easier than the reality because people that have passive incomes of things running on the side have done 10 years of 12-hour days to build a passive income eventually, right? This is where we don't see that foundational work often when people are like, oh, get a passive income and all these ads for these businesses that make, 6 figures easily off like 3 things people do. And we don't realize that actually that takes a lot of time to build up.
Oh, that's absolute bullshit. You can't make passive income if you're not making active income first.
Yes, that's
Like, let's
absolutely
start with
correct.
active income. Like, you know what I mean? If you're,
Yeah,
again, if it's not a job, if it's like your own pursuit, let's start with income.
yeah,
Then let's start with profit.
yeah.
Then let's start with understanding return of investment and profit margins. And then let's build a machine for the passive income. And passive income is always in quotes because I mean, unless you're like getting a return from like some stock in the market, if it's an actual business, you're gonna have to be tending to the business.
You're right. You're absolutely right. I saw this quote on LinkedIn the other day. He's like, let's be honest with ourselves. When we're talking about passive income, we just don't want to work. And it's
Of
like,
course.
that's actually, I'm there. I just don't want to work sometimes. I wish something was just like paying me. Which that, like you said, that is an option after you build the business and you know who your customer is and you know where the money's coming from and you have a piece of something you can pull over here and get some pre-recorded courses or some downloadables. And that takes a lot of time to build your world enough where you can start pulling in different products and different services at different price points, different engagement strategies for yourself. But you're absolutely right. Any type of financial advisor or wealth coach always says, first, just make more money. Like
Totally.
the investment side of it comes from making more money. You will have more disposable income when your salary increases. That's this first step. The second step is now where are you going to put that money and how do you make that make you more money later? But I think we often miss the beginning step, the hardest part, which is like, how do I make more money in the first place? How do I build a business? How do I build a salary? How do I increase how many people are seeing me? How do I build the first step of the business, which is people just paying me for the thing that I'm putting out there in the world? And it could take a lot of my time and a lot of hours, but it's the feedback that you're doing something that people want to pay for. And that's the piece that you're in. But what you were talking about, the lack of satisfaction, I think any entrepreneur who's a true entrepreneur will never fully be satisfied. I think
Right.
that's part of the like blood contract signed of you're an entrepreneur now and you are like giving your life away for this journey of high risk, no, potentially no reward someday. But it's the journey that entrepreneurs want. They want to create new things. They want to meet new people. They want to be in a new space. They want to have something on their
Right.
own. They see their vision in the world as the most important vision. So it is a very unique stamp, like you said, and you don't want that, if that's too stressful for you. And I was just coaching this girl the other day who was like, how do you get into entrepreneurship? And she was coming from a finance background. And I coached her out of being an entrepreneur because I was like, look, you're already going to an MBA. You just finished school for finance. You have a job at a firm. Do you want to risk that and go on your own and not have a boss? Or do you feel really comfortable and safe where you are and you just keep building up in that space? And she's like, that's a really good question. I was like, this might not be for you
Totally.
because this journey is yours, only yours, and you have to figure it out on the way. And yes, there's going to be a lot of advisors and support people along the way. You and me do this for other people, but it is the nonlinear path. And that nonlinear path means nonlinear communities, being very creative, and needing to pivot regularly, needing to know numbers, needing to know marketing, needing to know the trends, needing to know technology. We need to know all of the pieces. And that's exciting to me. I really enjoy that. But that foundational piece, like you said, is the most important piece here. And I'm really glad that you've spelled that out so well, no pun intended, spelled that well out so well for all of us. I'm
Yeah.
curious if you do any specific spells. You wanted to add something.
Oh, hell yeah, I do specific spells. But before, no, I was just gonna say that it's absolutely not for everyone. Like my best friend on the planet has had a job at the same place for 1 trillion years. She couldn't be happier. And she's like, I could never do what you do. Like I would have an ulcer.
Yeah.
And I look at her life and I'm like, I'd be bored out of my skull. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And like, neither one is better. It's just like a lifestyle choice and what's your heart's desire and your personality and all of that. And so if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. And like, that's totally fine. But also, I think that choosing it, knowing what it takes, because yeah, this idea like, be your own boss, passive income. I'm like, I've never seen somebody who's that whom that worked for that didn't work their butt off
Mhm. That's
first.
right.
So like there's a ton of work involved and the work always works. And what I mean by that is like even if your particular endeavor right now doesn't work out the way you anticipated, maybe you don't get the clients, or maybe it's the wrong offer, or maybe you do end up broke or whatever, that work never goes to waste because all of those learnings are going to be foundational for your next step anyway. So I'm a firm believer that as long as you don't give up and are willing to do the work, it's going to work. And the reason there's so many people that it looks like they did it with no work or very little work, when you start digging deeper, somebody else did the work for them. Like either there's like some exploitative aspect to it, or there's some generational wealth, or there's some positional power. Like it all, I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's always an explanation for how things are. And sometimes it's not pretty how the sausage is made. But if you want to make, a clean offering, that's also totally available. And I believe that it can totally work as long as you're
There
open and
are,
flexible to learn.
thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that and then speaking the truth about when we look at other, it's so easy to compare. I do this all the time, compare myself to other really successful businesses that are run by individual women that are healers. And then I look under the hood a little bit and I'm like, oh, you have generational wealth. You are allowed to take this risk. You have a marketing person as your father. Like there are certain people that are just positioned to succeed no matter what they end up doing, and they get the right formula from birth. They got them. They were born in the bed with the posts and the silver spoons, and that was just it. And for those of us that did not have that upbringing and are the ones who have to make our own living no matter what we're doing, it's a higher risk. And you're right, it's a slower burn. We don't have the credit or we don't have the funds to put into our own business. We have to be slower and more strategic about it. And that is my goal here, making it affordable and accessible and where people can ask real questions like, how do I look at the financials? How do I see if this works? What is the way I can put $5 into ads to test them and see if they work? We do these things.
Yeah.
I do them all the time. And how do we know it's working? And how do I actually take really calculated risks? Because I can't afford not to. That's the reality and that's the journey we're in. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to have the confidence to do it and to do it well enough to keep going and to succeed. But I do want to ask about spells before I open it up for questions. So, do you
Yeah.
have any spells you do around the energy of money and dispelling? I keep putting some great puns in here. Dispelling our cultural ideas of dirty money and wealth and lack of confidence around it.
Yeah, yeah. That's a difficult question for me to answer because I'm not a big fan of prescriptive spells. So what I mean by that is I'm not the kind of witch that will be like, go get 3 bay leaves and and do this and that because I believe that spells are very um they when they're most powerful is because they're personalized, right? So I don't have like a generic sort of thing. But this is what I can tell you is that I think that understanding money as an energy that you're building a relationship with is super, super important. And so some of the things that I've done throughout my life, like on my altar, I don't know if you can see it, like right there in that corner, there is a bowl filled with cash, and it has like coins and bills from all over the planet from my travels. And it's because I'm in relationship with it and I want to like have the somatic experience of like seeing it every day and it not like freaking me out. And it has also a quote. I can't see it from here, but it's something along the lines of like, blessed money at the service of whatever, joy and humanity or something like that. Like basically like naming it in the way that, like, what kind of money relationship do I want to have? And so doing it, reinforcing that idea and that sort of connection with it, that it's like a loving thing that's at the service of humanity. Having an empty bowl by your doorway, so you have a receptacle to capture all the blessings that are coming your way, and then sitting with the energy of money and building that relationship and being, going into meditation, putting yourself in a trance and connecting with like, what does money look like, what does it feel like, what does it smell like, what does it think, what do I think of it or him or her, however it shows up. And really developing that relationship, I think, is like a super helpful thing, because for most of us, money is like this nebulous idea that might not be a really clear thing, and it might have a lot of negative connotations, but we also want it a lot, but we don't want to admit to it. But maybe we do. It's met, right? It's complicated. So I would think about it in the same way that I would think about any relationship. Like, how do I build a relationship? I show up, I'm curious, I get to know you, I ask questions, I tell you about myself, right? Like we start a dialogue. And so whatever mechanism works for you to start a dialogue with money, I think that's a really, really, actually that's a spell that I feel comfortable prescribing for everybody. Find a mechanism for you to open a dialogue with money, and that could be journaling, that could be in meditation, that whatever works for you, but like try to see if you can start having an interaction and what you learn about yourself in relationship to it. How do you feel about it? How do you treat it? How does it treat you? Um, and that simple practice is super transformative for people's relationship with money.
Thank you. You practice magic like I do, which is personal, intentional. I know there's classical and modern witchcraft and different lineages of witchcraft and definitely different lineages within modern witchcraft or modern occult studies. And some people are very prescriptive, like you said, and have the spells and the recipes. But similar with a lot of the meditations I do here, it's for me and my teacher, Dr. Clarisse Estes, it's so deeply working with the psyche and how we understand our stories and the archetypes around things that just completely aligns with the work that I've done around money. The one time I saw the energy of money, I'm going to say something very personal. It was I did a psychedelic called DMT one time when I was in my 20s with this friend that got it from mimosa bark, and I said, "Okay, great. I'm going to be." It's like a 2 second journey, and I was sitting in ceremony, and I meditated, and I got back up, and you lay down, and I saw this machine. It was this chrome white metallic machine, and all these dials and levers and things moving. It looked like it was from the 1920s, and I just saw it for a quick second in my mind and woke up and I was like, I just saw the energy of money. It's just a machine someone made. And you're learning how to work it and dial it and move it. And the more you know how to oil those cogs, the more you'll know about it. And it became this energy outside of my personal value and my personal worth. It pulled it out of me in many ways. And it was a really cool, very important vision for me in my early 20s because it helped me relate to it differently. And I like that image and I use that image still today in some of my classes because I'm like, look, guys, it's this man-made thing. It's not a sacred altar thing. It's a sacred altar, your relationship with it. But it
Correct.
itself is a man-made tool, right? We used to have eggs and goats. This is our new
Right.
version of it. And so
Exactly.
it's still a relational piece. And in that book, Sapiens, which I love by Yuval Noah Harari, I'm looking at my library, he has this whole chapter about the energy of money and how it's this collective consciousness around magic. It's this made up idea that we all agree on. And
Right.
that if we don't understand it as a made up idea, then it'll have too much power over us. And I love, there's really good academia behind that concept. But I think what you're speaking of too is that you don't even have to look at the academic side of our psyche to understand that it's this elusive energy that's very powerful in our society. Probably one of the most powerful tools we have.
Yeah. No, I
Maybe
have to
the most
agree.
powerful tool in our modern day.
I love the visual of like a machine with gears. Super helpful to think about it that way.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I was like, oh yeah. And it's not even that updated. It's old. It's chrome. It's not fancy at all. And yeah, it was just a really interesting idea. But it has served me. It has served me a lot in my life to be like, oh, I can read a book about this because I don't know how to work this machine. Right? Because it's not a deity or like an internal journey, it's a like the more I learn about it, actually the better I am at it. And it's academic.
Yeah.
Um, and it's absolutely true with business. This is a man-made way of interacting with each other. Business. There's lingo, there's language, there's rules, there's legalities, and it's you got to learn it to do it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maritza, for diving into that with me. I want to open
Sure.
it up for questions for you. Thank you so much. And I will have more questions as well. And I want to hear more about Bruja School before we end today. Who would like to ask some questions for Maritza? Monique or Lauren?
Well, I'm not sure I have a question. I've been trying to see if I can kind of formulate, but I guess I so appreciate hearing how you um, talked about the way you made a choice to have another thing as your income generating mechanism while you started or planted seeds for the Bruja School. And for me, for many years, I've been kind of straddling, like having a full-time job and always thinking that I could somehow bridge from that into something else. And I've found it to be incredibly difficult for me personally. Um, I'm single, I support myself, and I feel like I don't quite have that sort of, I don't want to say I don't have the entrepreneurial drive, but I feel drained by the end of my time with work. And so I've had different kinds of jobs and tried to restructure things. And I don't know, I'm just sitting right now in a place of being like, is it that I can't do that? Like create this thing that I want to create, or um just like trying to find a structure that I can be in, that so that I can somehow build some bridging mechanism. Anyway, it's and there's not really a question in that. It's just something that I've struggled for a really long time, and I really have it's made me feel badly about myself, I think, because I feel like it's been just a thing that's, I don't know. So I maybe have to do some more soul searching around that, like how much I'm really wanting to give. And some of it has been like, well, maybe I need to leave and live in a less expensive place and make some bigger compromises in my life to be able to really do that. And then another piece is that I know that I really love working in kind of groups or organizations, but I like to have sort of, I want to bring actually this thing over here that I'm wanting to work on, my gifts, and kind of bringing them in a little bit. Or like I feel a little bit that if I were just on my own working, that I might miss having a group to work within. So that's been also another struggle. And I know that I don't really see this other like organization to work in. Like I feel like I think in my mind, maybe down the road there might be more organizations in my mind that I'm imagining, but they're not here right now. Um, So anyway, I don't know. It's just a lot of thoughts that are being sparked by all this. So
Oh my God, Lauren, yes, yes, and yes, I relate to so much of that thinking. Okay, so first of all, I did not start the consulting company to fund Bruja School at all. When I started my consulting company, I didn't know I wanted to start Bruja School. Like I wanted to start a consulting company. And I think now that you bring it up, I think that and that was like really successful. It went really well. And I learned a lot about business. And I think Bruja School, the idea of it was in the back of my mind for a long time, but I never really made the time, took it seriously, realized it was a true desire, whatever, whatever. And I think that what happened is that when I started working on my own, I realized like, okay, so maybe I can do this. And so that's why Bruja School has been so slow, for my standards, so slow on this side in quotes, because I wanted to do it a particular kind of way. And um, and my thinking around that has changed over the last couple of years. And what I mean by that is that if I understood sooner, more accurately, if I believed sooner that Bruja School was a viable business, I would have gone about it very differently. And what I'm doing right now is reflective of those of that change of thinking. So, for example, I had money to spend on ads all along. I just didn't wanna. I didn't know that it could work. I didn't know that it was worth it. Like the idea of like making money, or sorry, spending money to make money on that part of my life was like, for some reason, a total non-starter. And in hindsight, I'm like, okay, I really wonder what that was about because it was really unhelpful. I do trust divine timing. I'm sure there's like a larger explanation for this, but in terms of like my part in it. And so um, I think the difference between my story and what you're describing is that I didn't, like I said, like I didn't understand that I genuinely wanted Bruja School to be a successful business until like about a year ago. So in that way, it's like a very baby business. And like I was joking with Laura, I was like, I'll be back in a couple of years to tell you how it's going. But I think that the decision of, is this the thing that I want to have be my business, is the most important thing before anything else, right? Because like I feel like again, for me, it was kind of like a fun pseudo business. I mean, people paid for Liberation Magic, and paid really good money, don't take me wrong, but I wasn't really focused on scaling it or thinking about what it would mean or do I have the energy, none of that until like about a year ago. And I think that having done a separate business beforehand allowed me the clarity to be like, oh yeah, no, this is viable. I love it. Let's go. And so I feel like I just started from that perspective. I think that what you're sharing is really, it has, from what I heard, and I may have misheard you, but from what I heard, it has two aspects to it. One is like your true heart's desire. Like, I don't know what your business is, but this thing that you're kind of disappointed that is not where you want it to be yet. Is this like really what you want to have work out in your life? And the answer is yes, one path. And if the answer is no, another path. If the answer is yes, then what you need, and I'm sorry, this is so not magical, is like a proper business plan. And what I mean by that is how much money do you need to live per month to like not starve to death or whatever your baseline is? Because for some people, that's like $15,000. For some people, it's like 3K. For some people, it's $800. For some people, it's like 50K. So like zero judgment on the number, but like you need to pick your number. And the number fluctuates depending on, like you said, how far you're willing to go to make this work, right? And so the business plan, of course, like who's your customer? What's your service? How do you market? All of that. But really, so that's like the what's normally understood as a business plan. But I'm also thinking business plan in terms of like, how am I going to make this viable? Like financially for me to get there. And so, do we know how many of the things you need to sell, how often to make this money? Do you have a plan for how you're going to find those people? How much money do you need to spend to find those people, right? And that's what I was sharing a little while ago about like right now I started this new marketing strategy that I've never tried before, which is like the running ads. And today I've quote lost money, right? Because like I haven't made the money back. But based on how long I've tried it, how much money I've spent, I don't feel any particular. I'm excited about it. Like I'm certain that it's a good investment and it's gonna pay back. But I didn't just get to that like, let's try it. You know what I mean? Like I really thought it through. I was like, okay, how much money can I spend and not make a return and not feel like I'm getting an ulcer, right? Who knows about this that can advise, like, how am I going to make this feasible? And I think that sometimes when we have a path or a line of work that's really our heart's desire, it stays very ethereal and nebulous. And so I think that in your case, first make the decision, is this like my thing? And if so, how, not can I make it happen? That's the wrong question. The question is, how do I make it happen? I don't know if that helps, but I hope so.
Yeah, I appreciate that, how to make that happen. And I think you also said something about believing, and I also think timing is I have a lot of astrology is a big part of my training, and I know that absolutely cycles of time there are more times when things are feasible and other times when they're not. So I think that's a very true and really important and sometimes really overlooked piece for success or moving forward with things.
And run the numbers.
Yeah, yeah,
Like that's because that's the part that like folks that are more into like, intuitive practices, sort of healing arts and such, we are less excited about that part. And I'm not gonna lie, I find it kind of boring, but I do get a high when I do it because it's so clarifying and it makes me feel so powerful. Even when the numbers don't look like I want them to look, but the fact that I know exactly what they look like is incredible. And so I think that going through the exercise of figuring out what it would take to make it happen and what your needs are and how you can resource yourself is an incredibly empowering exercise and eventually a practice because you need to keep revisiting that over time.
yeah, and I think part of what I'm hearing in my head, and I've done this before, like a lot of my mentors that I've like one of the pieces of my that I would like to have is a flower essence practitioner business, which I've worked with for many, many, like 15 I don't know, longer than that for myself and with some people. But I've like some of my mentors, I've never really been like, I've always been like, but is it possible? Like, is it possible to get enough clients? Or like some part of me is still like, I don't know. I think in my heart feels like I believe that it's not possible. And I can hear that, like I can hear those things going on in my head where I'm like, I don't think it's possible to find enough clients to to support what I would need probably to live. So that's like one thing I can hear. But I also, I think I have answers for that too, versus like, well, maybe that's one piece of the business, but then maybe there are some other parts that could come in to support in other ways. Anyway, it's a big conversation, but
And there's 8 billion people on Earth.
yeah, yeah. And I also appreciated what you were just saying about our gifts being really valuable and offering them. And I think that's a piece of it too. Sometimes when I feel like for me, I know that flower essences and other things that are, you know, magic, these things are maybe that are less tangible, like are so important to me. They bring so much meaning to my life. They meaning making my way of like understanding the world. And yet, like, there's a piece of me that's feeling like, well, if I have to explain it how it works or like prove that it works, there's a part of me that's like, I don't want to do that for people. Like, I don't want to have to, but so, but I can hear also that there's something about language and the language we use to talk about what we do and is a very important part of how we want to share what we do. And anyway, sorry, I'm being very, I'm a lot of things are being sparked for me of what you
Listen, I
thank
want
you.
to stop you right there because, like, what you're saying right now, I feel in my bones, and it's the following. Explaining why it works or how it works is the excuse people like us use to not talk about it at all. Okay? You have this assumption. Let's say I'm your potential client and you're going to pitch me, I don't know, like come do this flower essence consultation because I want to help you with whatever, your stress or your irritable bowel syndrome or whatever the hell. And you're assuming that I'm going to want to have like the white paper with the scientific footnotes of all the times the flower essences have healed this particular thing. And the reality is that I don't give a shit how, right? I just know that it does happen. And because you are afraid of having to show me receipts, you don't even tell me about it. Ask me how I know. And the reality is that people that are interested in their spiritual growth and development, or that want to know how to learn magic, how to work their own magic, very, very rarely, I'm gonna dare say never, have been like, how does it work? You know, I just tell them how I work it, and then they have the experience and it works and they're delighted. And I think that, and maybe I'm projecting, Lori, and if so, my apologies, but I think that many times we feel like, well, this is extra hard, it's extra special, it's extra difficult to explain just because it feels awkward AF to just be out there talking about the thing. When in reality, if you were just talking about flower essences, period, that would probably be enough. In other words, I think you created an extra layer of difficulty for yourself, assuming a pro. Let me ask you this: how often has this come up in real life?
Well, I feel like when I sometimes mention flower essences and people are like, what are they? Are they like, you know, are they, oh, it's like an essential oil. And I'm like, no, they're actually kind of like, and I explain, well, I'm not, I have to work on the explanation of it, I think. But then people are just kind of like look at you really strange, or they're like, I don't know, some people are really interested and then some people aren't. So I guess it's that like some people are going to be your client or interested and other people just are not going to be. So yeah.
Right. So focus on the ones that are going to be, because I think that so many times it's like it feels so awkward to feel like we're weird or being rejected or like having to explain ourselves, that that's more salient in our brains because that's how humans are wired so that we survive, right? Like focusing on the negative. And so it makes sense that you're thinking about that, but I would encourage you to think about the people that have been interested. What did they actually ask? What did you actually tell them? And my guess is that you rarely had to be defensive around it.
Yeah. Well, and I think for myself, they kind of came into my life in sort of a magical way, and I was not looking for them or understanding or knowing what they were, and they just kind of like just blossomed for me in my own path. And
Yeah.
I do also want to say that sense, I just remember I had a teacher who once said something about healing, like healing in general, how we really don't know how people heal. Like we think we do, but like at the very deepest levels of how healing happens, he's like, you might have been on the acupuncture table and then driving home and heard some song and like you don't like there's all of these things that are happening that contribute to healing. And so anyway, I think I always hold that in this space of the world's much bigger and things happen in ways that we can't always explain or understand.
I agree. I agree 100%. And the last thing I want to say about that is that I think it's hilarious that we decide what's divine and magical, and we're so judgy and righteous about it. And what I mean by that, it reminded me of myself when you said like, "Oh, these people came in a very magical way," because it's like great. And what tells you that marketing is not a magical tool put on earth by the goddess or spirit for you to utilize to find even more people in this magical way? Me, my judgy brain is the one that's saying that. I'm like, oh no, I just want to sit here like a queen and people will fall from the sky because that feels magical. Have you heard the joke about like the guy that's drowning and like God, it's like God, please save me. And it's like a boat comes and it's like, get on the boat. No, no, God's gonna save me. And then like all this hell comes and then a helicopter and he's like, no, no, God's gonna save me. And then he drowns and he dies and then he meets God and he's like, God, why didn't you save me? And God is like, I sent you a boat, I sent you a helicopter. You know what I'm saying? And like, if I'm gonna wait for the clouds to part and the light to come through, I'm gonna be waiting a long ass time. Like I choose to believe that boring ass tech bro marketing strategies are the goddess's gift to Bruja School. Like, why would I not want to think that? I wasn't born thinking this way, right? I had to like wash my own brain for quite a while. But now that I have that approach, I'm way more excited about growing this business because I don't need to do it any particular kind of way as long as I can live with it. And I can live with it because I know the medicine that I bring through this magic. So I'm like, anyway,
Thank you so much. I appreciate everything you've shared.
you're welcome.
I know we're almost at time, but I wanted to add a little bit more in there for Lauren and for anyone else listening is that this is the piece, the communication of the healing path without, as you were saying, Maritza, having to go through the mechanism of how it works is the piece that I feel like I'm still on that journey of learning, but I'm getting much closer to it. And I'm getting much closer to it because I'm in multiple journeys of how herbs work with people. And I'm really blessed to be in the integrative medicine space. And I'm blessed to be in the granola hippies that don't have, never shop anywhere outside of co-ops and farms. And with my own people in an urban environment and with cancer clients and with my own family and my community. So I'm really lucky I have multiple audiences that I talk to that see through different lenses in the field that I'm in. And Lauren, I would encourage you to actually listen to telepathy tapes because she does this extremely well. She's not a great podcaster, but she communicates energy healing in multiple different ways that people can understand it, which is why it's such a powerful and very popular podcast. The one that I just listened to was specifically on the New York Times article that just came out, but right before it came out, all of the research they did on Reiki and cancer cells and how they saw a Reiki practitioner, an energy healer in a lab in over like 30 different ways in a dish. Cancer cells stopped dividing with energy healing. They had fake people do it, they had real people do it. They saw that the real, right? So now you're starting to get this data that actually no one gets to question. We just don't know how it's working. That's the mechanism of action but that's where I think saying like, I get to do something every day and I get to see people get better. That's almost enough that I've noticed for me as an herbalist. I go, I'm so lucky every day I get to see people get better. People now are like, what do you do? I'm like, oh, well, I'm an herbalist and I use herbal medicine and integrative integrative care. And they're like, tell me more. Because what I just told them is the thing they're seeking out, and they didn't even know where to find it, but they've been looking for it and they don't know where to find it. And that's the piece that I think we need to keep holding on to as healers of like, we get people that we get to see people get better every day. They fix their life, their energy is clear, they are sleeping better, whatever outcomes. We need to go with outcomes and then fill them in on the details later, right? It just so happens that you're a practitioner, a flower essence practitioner. It just so happens you're a bruja. It so happens that I'm an herbalist.
Right.
But people know what they want. They want the outcome. And as long as we keep reminding them the outcome is possible, they will then judge us on who we are and if they resonate with us as an individual. And then they'll be like, oh, and she happens to do flower essences. And that's the piece that I've come back to after 20 years, 25 years now in herbalism. It's like, oh, actually, what I do is the least important thing in this conversation. It's relational, it's outcome based, it's energy. And I think we all have that. We forget though, because we get stuck in the financials and all the things. But I know I'm over time, but I wanted to add to that because thank you so much for speaking directly to that, Maritza, because that's marketing. That's everything we do is just telling people. We don't have to convince them. They're already
Right.
looking. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Lauren, for asking the question. Thank you, Maritza, for being here. Always good to see you. Will you tell us about Bruja School and how to find you?
Yes, brujaschool.com, BRUJA school.com is my website, and everything you want to know about the Liberation Magic program and all the other offerings that I have for you can be found there. I think that's the easiest way because from there you can find my socials and everything else you need.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We will also share it in our community for people to access your work and find out ways that they can work with you.
Thank you so much. It was so fun to be here. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a beautiful
you.
rest of your day.
Bye.